The Galactic Empire had always been an unchallenged force in the universe. For centuries, they dominated countless star systems, their reach stretching across the galaxy like a shadow. They controlled everything, from the smallest planets to the most powerful fleets of warships. Nothing and no one dared to challenge their supremacy. Their advanced technology, massive starships, and legions of loyal soldiers made them a near-invincible power, crushing any resistance with ruthless efficiency. The Empire, led by Emperor Zyros, had long seen itself as the ultimate force in the galaxy. The Empire's citizens were taught from an early age that they were superior, their technology unrivaled. Aliens from all corners of the universe bowed before them, paying tribute or facing swift destruction. The Empire ruled with an iron fist, and they believed they would never face a serious threat. But that was about to change. It started with a routine report, just another insignificant update from one of the Empire's many scouting ships. The captain, a veteran of several successful missions, had sent a transmission that was nothing more than a simple status check on a routine patrol. But this time, something caught the attention of the Empire's central command. The transmission was strange, incomplete, and filled with garbled static, but one phrase stood out: unknown fleet. Earth, faster than light technology. The words rattled through the Empire's data systems like an unsettling echo. Earth? The Empire had long written off Earth, considering the planet a backward and primitive world. Humans were weak, they lacked advanced technology, and their forces were far too small to challenge the Empire. For centuries, Earth had been nothing more than a footnote in galactic history, insignificant, isolated, and easily ignored. There was no reason to believe that Earth could be anything but a minor, unimportant planet in a small solar system. The report was quickly dismissed by the Empire's leadership as a glitch, a malfunction caused by interference in the communication systems. After all, how could a primitive species like humans possibly possess the technology to travel faster than light? The idea was preposterous. The Empire's arrogance ran deep, and they simply couldn't fathom the possibility that a race they had written off as insignificant could develop such technology. But a strange thing happened shortly after. The Empire's most powerful warship, the Furax, vanished without a trace. It was an event so mysterious that it sent shockwaves through the Empire. The Furax was one of the Empire's pride and joy, a massive dreadnought capable of obliterating entire fleets with a single blast. Its weapons were the most advanced in the galaxy, and its crew was made up of elite soldiers loyal only to the Empire. It was a symbol of the Empire's strength and invincibility. No one had ever dared to challenge it. Yet, when the Furax was sent to investigate the reports of the mysterious Earth fleet, it simply disappeared. One moment, it was transmitting regular updates, the next, there was nothing. No distress signal, no warning, not a single trace. It was as if the ship had been swallowed by the void itself. The only thing left behind were scattered fragments of data, a puzzle that no one could solve. The disappearance of the Furax threw the Empire into a state of panic. Its crew was lost, and the ship's advanced technology had failed to protect it. The Imperial Command knew that something was out there, something they couldn't explain. And they knew it wasn't a coincidence. The events weren't just isolated incidents, they were connected. The mysterious report, the disappearance of the Furax, there had to be something more. Word of the disappearance quickly spread throughout the Empire, but Emperor Zyros refused to believe that Earth could be the source of such a threat. His advisors suggested that the loss of the Furax could have been caused by an anomaly, perhaps a new form of space turbulence or a weapon the Empire had yet to discover. But Zyros wasn't convinced. He couldn't accept the thought that a race as primitive as humans could pose any real danger. The idea was simply too ludicrous. Yet, the Empire's intelligence networks, usually reliable in identifying threats, were now reporting strange anomalies around the Earth system. Unexplained energy signatures, readings that didn't match anything in the Empire's records. And, most notably, the sudden and inexplicable presence of ships. Small, stealthy, and cloaked, they seemed to appear out of nowhere, often vanishing just as quickly as they arrived. These weren't random ships or space debris, this was something much more calculated. A force. A force that was moving closer to the heart of the Empire. The leaders of the Galactic Empire were forced to confront a terrifying possibility. Could it be that Earth had developed a fleet capable of faster-than-light travel? Could they have secretly built a military force so advanced that it could challenge the Empire's dominance? The thought was incomprehensible. But the more the Empire's commanders investigated, the more they realized that Earth's secret fleet was real, and it was heading straight for them. The Galactic Empire's leadership, from Emperor Zyros himself to the high-ranking officers in the Imperial Command, gathered for an emergency meeting. Their mood was grave, their voices filled with disbelief and anger. They had underestimated Earth for far too long, and now, it seemed as though their pride would be their downfall. This is absurd. General Varen, one of the Empire's fiercest military leaders, roared. We have wiped out entire species for less than this. A planet like Earth? It's a joke. But Admiral Lyra, the Empire's top strategist, spoke with calm authority. General, we cannot ignore what has happened. The Furax is gone. Vanished. And these ships, these human ships, they are not a mistake. They're real, and they're closing in on us. We cannot afford to dismiss this any longer. Zyros glared at the table, his piercing eyes filled with fury and confusion. How could this be? How could Earth, a backwater planet, have such advanced technology? It doesn't make sense. There is no logical explanation, Lyra admitted. We have no records of humans developing faster-than-light travel. But the evidence is irrefutable. They're out there, and they're coming for us. As the Empire's leaders debated the situation, an unsettling realization began to take hold. The human fleet, though small in number, was unlike anything the Empire had ever faced before. They were cloaked, invisible to the Empire's most sophisticated detection systems. They moved with speed and precision, their ships appearing and disappearing in the blink of an eye, leaving no trace behind. This was a new kind of warfare, one the Empire had never anticipated. The fear began to spread throughout the Empire's military ranks. What if the humans were not just hiding a fleet, they were hiding something far worse? What if they had developed a weapon capable of destroying the Empire's most powerful ships, something far more advanced than the Empire's own technology? The very thought sent a shiver down the spine of the Empire's elite commanders. By now, the entire galaxy had been put on alert. The Galactic Empire, once confident in its absolute superiority, was now faced with an unknown enemy, an enemy it had long underestimated. The fear of the unknown loomed large, and for the first time in centuries, the Empire found itself uncertain of the future. As the Earth fleet grew closer, the Imperial forces scrambled to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. But even as they readied themselves for battle, a chilling truth began to settle in: the Empire had no idea what it was up against. And what they feared the most was the one thing they had never considered: the possibility that Earth, a planet once seen as weak, had finally found a way to fight back. The countdown to war had begun, and in the darkest corners of the galaxy, a new force was rising. One that would challenge the very foundation of the Empire's reign. The calm before the storm was over. The storm itself was now inevitable. And the Galactic Empire was about to learn a hard lesson: never underestimate humanity. Captain Alex Donovan stood at the helm of the Aegis, Earth's flagship and the crown jewel of the secret fleet. The ship's sleek, dark exterior reflected the dim glow of the distant stars. Alex's gaze swept across the vastness of space, but his mind was far from the stars. He was consumed by doubt. The mission ahead wasn't just another military operation, it was humanity's first strike against the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known. And it was up to him to lead them. The fleet had been years in the making, its existence shrouded in secrecy. For decades, Earth's brightest minds had worked tirelessly to unlock the mysteries of faster-than-light, FTL, travel, a technology once thought to be impossible. But in a moment of brilliance, humanity had done the unthinkable. They had cracked the code. They had developed FTL travel, and with it, the ability to move ships across vast stretches of space in the blink of an eye. But that was only the beginning. Alongside FTL travel, Earth's engineers had devised cloaking technology, devices that could make ships invisible to even the most sophisticated detection systems. These cloaked ships could strike without warning, leaving no trace behind, making them the perfect weapon against the Empire's overwhelming might. But with all this power came an enormous responsibility. Alex couldn't help but feel the weight of it pressing down on him. He wasn't just leading a fleet, he was leading the future of humanity. The eyes of billions of people, both on Earth and across its colonies, were watching him. The fate of humanity rested on his shoulders. He glanced at the crew around him, veterans of countless missions, but none of them had ever faced an enemy like the Empire. None of them had ever fought a battle that could change the entire course of the galaxy. The tension was palpable, and despite the advanced technology at his disposal, Alex couldn't shake the feeling of being the underdog. They were about to face a force that had crushed civilizations for centuries. How could a few hundred ships, no matter how advanced, stand a chance? As Alex walked through the Aegis, he passed several of the other ships in the fleet, each one a testament to Earth's newfound power. The ships were a mix of sleek, stealthy cruisers and heavily armed warships, all equipped with the latest technology. But as impressive as the ships were, it wasn't the firepower that made them formidable, it was the element of surprise. The Empire had no idea what was coming. The fleet had been under wraps for years, built in the deepest corners of Earth's oceans and the remote corners of space. No one, except for the highest levels of government and military officials, knew of its existence. And now, that secrecy was about to pay off. The Earth fleet, with its cloaking devices and FTL capabilities, would give the Empire no time to prepare. They would strike swiftly and decisively, leaving the Empire reeling. Alex stood in front of a massive holographic map of the galaxy, his fingers tracing the path of the fleet. They were heading into the heart of the Empire's territory. The plan was simple: move in fast, hit hard, and disappear before the Empire had a chance to retaliate. But there was no guarantee of success. The Empire was powerful, and the consequences of failure would be disastrous. Alex had seen the Empire's strength firsthand, he had studied their tactics, their ships, and their weapons. He knew that even with the advantage of surprise, they were still facing a force capable of wiping out entire fleets. The fleet's first target was a supply depot on the edge of the Empire's outer rim. It was a key military installation, and its destruction would cripple the Empire's ability to resupply its forces in the region. It was a bold move, but one that would send a clear message: Earth was no longer a passive player in the galaxy. They were ready to fight. The moment Alex had been dreading arrived sooner than expected. As the fleet neared the Empire's outer rim, he could feel the tension in the air. The crew was on high alert, their minds focused on the mission. But Alex's thoughts kept drifting back to the one question that had been haunting him for weeks: could they really pull this off? His communications officer, Lieutenant Rachel Moore, turned to him with a look of concern on her face. "Captain, we're approaching the target. All ships are in position and ready to cloak." Alex nodded, his jaw set. This was it. There was no turning back now. They were about to make history, but the risks were enormous. The success of this mission would depend on timing, precision, and the element of surprise. If they were detected, if they failed to destroy the depot quickly, the Empire would retaliate with unimaginable force. "Activate cloaking devices," Alex ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his chest. "Engage FTL drives on my mark." The crew moved quickly, their movements fluid and practiced. In a matter of seconds, the Aegis and the fleet's other ships vanished from sight, cloaked and undetectable. They moved silently through space, their advanced technology ensuring they were completely invisible to the Empire's sensors. It was a silent, deadly dance, one that had been years in the making. As the fleet reached the target, Alex could feel the rush of adrenaline. The supply depot was just ahead, a sprawling complex of orbital platforms and warehouses. It was heavily guarded, but the humans had an advantage: speed and stealth. They could strike before the Empire even realized what was happening. "On my mark," Alex said, his voice low but commanding. "Prepare to strike." The countdown began. 10 seconds. The fleet was in position. The tension was unbearable. Alex's mind raced, but he kept his focus on the mission. He had trained for this moment for years. He had prepared for every possible scenario. But nothing could have fully prepared him for the weight of what was about to happen. "Now!" Alex shouted. The fleet's weapons came to life in an instant. Missiles and laser blasts streaked through space, hitting the supply depot with deadly precision. The platforms exploded in a series of brilliant flashes, the shockwaves rippling through space. Within moments, the depot was a blazing ruin, its once pristine structures reduced to twisted wreckage. But the Empire was no fool. Even with the element of surprise on their side, they knew that the humans would eventually make their move. And the Empire's retaliation was swift. Just as the fleet was pulling away, the first wave of enemy ships appeared from the depths of space. They were too late to stop the attack, but they would not let Earth's fleet escape unscathed. As the fleet turned and engaged their FTL drives once again, Alex felt a surge of victory, but it was tempered with the understanding of what was to come. This battle was only the beginning. The Empire would not take this attack lying down. They would retaliate, and Earth's fleet would have to face the full force of the Empire's wrath. Alex knew the war had only just begun. But in that moment, as the Aegis and the rest of the fleet disappeared into the vastness of space, he couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They had proven that they could strike back, that they could stand toe-to-toe with the greatest military force in the galaxy. And that was a victory in itself. The battle erupted with a fury that no one could have anticipated. The human fleet, cloaked in silence just moments before, had now launched its first full-scale strike against the Empire. The cold, empty void of space transformed into a chaotic symphony of flashing lights and violent explosions. The humans had made their mark. The Empire was no longer a distant threat, it was now facing a fight for its survival. As Captain Alex Donovan watched from the Aegis, he couldn't help but feel a surge of adrenaline. The fleet had moved in quickly, slipping past the Empire's early defenses using their cloaking devices, invisible to even the most sophisticated detection systems. They had appeared like ghosts, striking without warning and disappearing into the vastness of space before the enemy could react. "Target locked." Lieutenant Rachel Moore called out, her fingers flying over the controls. "Missiles ready to fire." The hum of the ship's systems echoed in the quiet of the command room as the countdown began. The first wave of missiles shot forward, their engines flaring bright blue as they rocketed towards the Empire's warships. The explosion was deafening, a burst of light and sound that shook the Aegis. Alex could see the shock on the faces of the enemy crew. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't prepared for humans to possess such power, such precision. Direct hit. "One cruiser down." Rachel shouted, her voice barely audible over the roaring battle. But the Empire, despite their arrogance, was not easily beaten. They quickly regrouped, deploying countermeasures that sent out a wave of electromagnetic pulses. The Aegis's cloaking device flickered momentarily, a sign that the Empire was starting to adapt to the humans' tactics. For the first time, Alex felt a pang of fear. The battle was far from over. In the distance, Alex could see the Empire's massive warships, their hulls gleaming under the light of nearby stars. These ships were formidable, tens of times larger than the Aegis, and they were equipped with devastating weapons capable of obliterating entire fleets in a single blow. But for all their size and firepower, the Empire's ships lacked one thing: unpredictability. The humans had the advantage of speed, stealth, and surprise. Their fleet moved like shadows in the dark, slipping in and out of combat with devastating precision. Alex could see the confusion spreading across the Empire's lines. They were used to dominating, to being the ones in control. But here, on this battlefield, it was the humans who were calling the shots. The battle intensified as more human ships joined the fray. The Aegis fired its main cannons, sending powerful beams of energy into the heart of an enemy destroyer. The ship buckled under the force of the attack, its shield flaring bright as it absorbed the blast before collapsing into a fireball. But it wasn't over yet. Another Imperial warship, larger and more heavily armed, fired back with a deadly accuracy. Alex's heart raced as the bright green lasers streaked across space, missing the Aegis by mere meters. "Brace for impact!" Alex shouted, his voice calm despite the tension. The crew reacted instantly, securing their stations and preparing for the inevitable blow. The Aegis shuddered as it dodged another round of laser fire, its engines roaring as they pushed the ship into a series of evasive maneuvers. But the humans weren't the only ones under fire. On the deck of the Aegis, Sergeant Bonner was leading a group of soldiers as they prepared to board one of the Empire's crippled ships. They had already inflicted heavy damage, but this was no time to relax. The Empire would retaliate with everything they had, and the humans needed to strike while they still had the advantage. Bonner's face was set with grim determination as he led his team through the airlock, his hand gripping the pulse rifle tightly. "This is it," Bonner muttered under his breath. "Let's make it count." They moved swiftly through the dark corridors of the enemy ship, their footsteps muffled by the soft hum of the ship's systems. They could hear the faint sounds of the Imperial soldiers moving in the distance. There was no time to waste. The Aegis needed their help if they were going to finish the job. As they reached the central control room, Bonner's squad engaged in close-quarters combat with the Empire's elite soldiers. The enemy was tough, their weapons advanced, but the humans had something they didn't: resolve. Bonner and his team fought with everything they had, pushing forward despite the odds. But then, the worst happened. Bonner, leading the charge, was hit. A powerful blast from an Imperial soldier's pulse rifle struck him in the chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Blood stained the floor of the Imperial warship, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The squad's progress halted as they rushed to Bonner's side, but there was no saving him. His wounds were too severe. "Sergeant, stay with us," one of his comrades shouted, but Bonner shook his head weakly. "It's too late," he said with a grim smile. "Finish the mission. We've got this." With his last breath, Bonner activated the self-destruct sequence for the ship's main reactor, ensuring the enemy would not be able to use the ship against them. His final sacrifice would save countless lives in the coming hours. The squad, devastated by the loss of their leader, redoubled their efforts. They moved quickly, planting explosives and clearing the last of the Empire's soldiers. The Imperial ship was now a ticking time bomb, and as the Aegis prepared for another strike, Bonner's sacrifice would echo across the battlefield. Back in the command center, Alex was already making plans for the next phase of the battle. The loss of Bonner hit hard, but it also steeled their resolve. Humanity was fighting not just for victory, but for their survival. The Empire's arrogance had cost them dearly, and it would cost them even more before this battle was over. "Time to go," Alex said, his voice firm. "Prepare for the final strike. We finish this now." The human fleet, battered but undeterred, regrouped for one last push. As the Aegis and the rest of the fleet opened fire once again, the sky erupted in a cataclysmic explosion, the full force of their wrath released on the Imperial forces. The battle raged on, but it was clear now, the humans were here to stay. In the midst of the chaos, Alex's heart still raced, but he couldn't afford to mourn just yet. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the battle began, he allowed himself a fleeting thought of hope. The humans had struck the first blow. And they had struck hard. The cold, empty silence of space, once a quiet observer to the human fleet's triumphs, was now pierced by the shrill alarms of the Aegis. The battle that had raged between the humans and the Empire had only been the beginning. The Galactic Empire, angered and humiliated by their defeat, was preparing for a counterstrike of unprecedented scale. The Empire's pride had been wounded, and they would stop at nothing to crush the humans. They had underestimated humanity's resilience once, now, they would pay for it. Captain Alex Donovan stood on the bridge of the Aegis, his eyes fixed on the holomap in front of him. The numbers were clear, the Empire was coming. And they were coming with everything they had. Enemy forces have regrouped. A massive fleet is en route, Lieutenant Rachel Moore said, her voice tight with urgency. The Empire is using everything they have. There's no way we can match them head-on. Alex's mind raced as he looked over the tactical data. The humans had dealt the Empire a devastating blow, but the odds were now stacked against them. The human fleet was still far smaller in number, with far less firepower, and the Empire's technological advantage was overwhelming. But Alex knew one thing, the humans weren't going to back down. We won't face them head-on, Alex said, his voice calm yet firm. We fight on our terms, with the same tactics that worked before. Guerrilla warfare. Strike fast, hit hard, and disappear into the shadows before they can retaliate. The human fleet moved like phantoms, barely a blip on the Empire's radar. Cloaking devices shielded their movements, while the faster-than-light engines allowed them to strike in one sector and vanish before the enemy could even react. It was the only chance they had. If they couldn't win by firepower, they would win through their ingenuity and speed. The Empire, for all its power, couldn't track the humans fast enough. Time and again, human ships darted in and out of battle, launching missiles, disrupting the enemy's formations, and retreating before the Empire could retaliate. But despite their agility, the humans were taking heavy losses. The Empire's relentless onslaught was overwhelming, and each battle left a painful mark on the human fleet. Bonner's death still weighed heavily on Alex's heart, a constant reminder of the stakes. The men and women in the fleet were no longer fighting for glory, they were fighting for survival. And the cost of that survival was steep. Every skirmish, every hit they took, brought them closer to the breaking point. But despite the toll, Alex knew there was no turning back. One such skirmish came just hours after the first wave of Empire retaliation. The Aegis led a hit-and-run strike on an Empire convoy, hoping to take down the weaker supply ships before the main fleet arrived. The attack was swift, missiles launched from cloaked positions, targets hit before the Empire could raise shields, and a swift retreat before they could retaliate. But this time, the Empire was ready. A massive destroyer, the Sledgehammer, had been sent to crush the human fleet's tactical advantage. Its hull was thicker than anything Alex had ever seen, and its weapons could level a city with a single shot. As the humans launched their assault, they quickly realized that the Sledgehammer wasn't just another ship, it was a trap. Red alert! Rachel shouted, her hands flying over the controls. The Sledgehammer is locking onto us. Brace for impact. Alex's heart sank as the Aegis shook violently. The ship's cloaking device was still operational, but the Empire's new sensor technology had finally caught up. The Sledgehammer's weapons unleashed a barrage of high-powered plasma bolts, each one powerful enough to rip through the human fleet's shields. Shields at 20%. Rachel called out, her voice strained. Get us out of here, Lieutenant. Alex ordered, but the words were already too late. The Aegis was being pulled into the heart of the fight, the Empire's massive fleet closing in from all sides. Captain, we can't outrun them. Rachel's voice shook with panic. We need to fall back, or we'll lose the entire fleet. Alex clenched his jaw. He couldn't afford to retreat, not now. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We're not running. We're fighting. The battle that followed was a brutal and bloody dance. The Aegis dodged and weaved, using every trick in the book to avoid the Empire's relentless fire. But the Empire was relentless. They'd learned quickly from their earlier losses and were now using everything from AI-controlled drones to devastating orbital bombardment to take down the human fleet. In the midst of the chaos, Alex's mind raced. The odds were against them, but he couldn't give up. His crew, his soldiers, had lost too much already. They had already sacrificed so much. And they wouldn't give up now. "Captain!" Rachel cried, her voice filled with panic. "We've lost contact with the Raven. They're down." Alex's heart dropped. The Raven was one of the fleet's fastest ships, and it had been crucial in their hit-and-run tactics. Losing it now was a devastating blow, but there was no time to mourn. There was only one thing left to do: fight. "Fire everything we've got!" Alex shouted, his voice a battle cry. "We're not letting them take us down." The Aegis unleashed everything it had: energy beams, missiles, plasma torpedoes, all aimed at the heart of the Sledgehammer's fleet. The battle raged on, with the human fleet showing no signs of giving up, despite their severe losses. But the cost of survival was taking its toll. The human fleet was down to fewer than half its original numbers. Ships that had once moved with the elegance of predators now fought with the desperation of animals backed into a corner. There was no easy path to victory, no clear route to success. Every move was a calculated risk, and every loss was a scar on the human will to fight. And yet, despite it all, Alex saw something in his crew, something the Empire could never understand. It was their unbreakable resolve. The humans fought not for power or glory, but for survival. For family. For freedom. The Empire had every advantage in terms of firepower, but the humans had the one thing that mattered most: the will to survive. Hours later, after the dust of battle had settled, the remaining human fleet regrouped, battered but not broken. They had survived the Empire's counterattack, and though the loss of ships, soldiers, and loved ones weighed heavily on their hearts, they still stood. Captain Alex Donovan stood on the bridge of the Aegis, his face grim but resolute. "We've taken heavy losses," he said, his voice calm despite the tension. "But we're still here. We're still fighting. And we will continue to fight until the Empire is no more." His crew nodded in silent agreement. The war was far from over, but the humans had made their point. They weren't going to be crushed by the Empire's might. They would keep fighting, keep resisting, until the Empire understood what humanity was truly capable of. The hum of the Aegis engines was the only sound that filled the bridge as Captain Alex Donovan stared at the holomap before him. The moment they had been preparing for had finally arrived, the final battle, the decisive strike against the heart of the Empire's power, their flagship. The Empire, once an unstoppable force in the galaxy, was now about to face the wrath of humanity, the underdogs who had fought and bled for every inch of their survival. "Captain, the flagship is in range," Lieutenant Rachel Moore said, her voice sharp with anticipation. "Our fleet is ready for the final assault. This is it. We either win, or we're all gone." Alex nodded solemnly, his thoughts briefly drifting to the countless sacrifices that had brought them here. Bonner's death, the loss of so many ships, and the unyielding pressure of being the last hope of Earth, it had all led to this one defining moment. The human fleet had come a long way from the skirmishes in deep space. Using their advanced cloaking technology and superior speed, they had launched a series of devastating raids against the Empire's supply lines and smaller vessels. But this was different. This was the final confrontation. This was where the fate of humanity would be decided. "All ships, prepare for the assault," Alex ordered, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "We're not just attacking a fleet, we're attacking the heart of the Empire itself. Stay focused. Stay sharp." The human fleet moved swiftly through space, cloaked and silent, like a pack of predators stalking their prey. The Empire's flagship, the Imperium, loomed ahead, a massive structure that dwarfed all the other ships in its fleet. It was the symbol of the Empire's dominance, a fortress of destruction armed with weapons capable of obliterating entire planets. And it was now within reach. As the human fleet approached, Alex's heart pounded in his chest. They had no room for error. The Empire's defenses were strong, and the flagship was heavily shielded. But the humans had one advantage: surprise. The Aegis led the charge, darting through the enemy lines, cloaked and invisible. The Empire, still reeling from their earlier defeats, was caught off guard. Initiate Phase 1, Alex commanded. All ships, break formation. Target their outer defenses. Missiles erupted from the human ships, cutting through the dark expanse of space. The Empire's ships, once formidable, were now scrambling to respond. Shields flared in bursts of blue energy, but the humans' weapons were designed to pierce even the strongest defenses. Explosions rocked the Empire's outer fleet, ships disintegrating in fiery showers of debris. The Aegis darted through the chaos, its engines glowing bright as it performed a series of impossible maneuvers. The human fleet wasn't just fighting for victory, they were fighting to show the galaxy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. Direct hit to their forward shields. Rachel shouted, her eyes locked on the data screen. We've breached their outer defenses, Captain. Alex's eyes burned with determination. The first phase had worked, but the real battle was yet to come. The Imperium itself loomed ahead, its vast size and overwhelming firepower a constant reminder of the Empire's supremacy. But Alex knew that if they could get close enough, they could cripple the flagship. The Empire was arrogant, and that would be their downfall. All ships, converge on the Imperium. This is it, time for the final strike. Alex shouted. The final phase of the battle began with the human fleet pushing forward, launching wave after wave of devastating attacks. They used every weapon in their arsenal: laser cannons, plasma torpedoes, and even experimental EMP bursts designed to disable the Empire's advanced targeting systems. The Empire's ships, struggling to retaliate, found themselves unable to predict the humans' next move. The Aegis was at the forefront of the charge, weaving through incoming fire with breathtaking agility. It was a dance of destruction, missiles flying past them, explosions rocking the ship as debris rained down in the vacuum of space. But the humans pressed on, determined to succeed where every other race in the galaxy had failed. Captain, we're getting close, Rachel warned. The Imperium is coming into range of our primary weapons. Once we're in position, it's all or nothing. Make it happen, Lieutenant, Alex said firmly. We can't afford to hesitate. As the human fleet closed the gap between themselves and the Imperium, the final, heart-stopping battle took place. The Aegis and its allies launched a series of coordinated attacks, their missiles and lasers cutting through the Empire's defenses like a hot knife through butter. The Imperium's shields flickered, struggling to absorb the damage, but it wasn't enough. The Empire had underestimated the sheer will and determination of humanity. In the chaos of battle, Alex could see the Imperium slowly begin to falter. Its once imposing figure was now scarred with craters, its weapons struggling to maintain their fire. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath as the human fleet closed in. Now! Alex shouted. In a single, massive explosion, the Aegis fired its final volley of torpedoes. The missiles tore through the remaining shield layers of the Imperium, reaching the vulnerable core of the flagship. For a brief moment, everything seemed to slow down. Time itself seemed to stretch as the humans watched in awe and disbelief as their weapons struck the heart of the Empire's symbol of power. Then, with a massive, earth-shaking explosion, the Imperium erupted in a fiery blaze, sending shockwaves through space. The flagship, once the symbol of the Empire's strength, was no more. Pieces of its shattered hull drifted in the vacuum, an eerie reminder of the fall of an empire. The human fleet, battered and scarred from the intense battle, watched as the Empire's ships began to retreat. The once feared forces of the Empire, humiliated and broken, fled into the void. The humans had done the impossible, they had taken down the Imperium. On the bridge of the Aegis, Alex stood motionless for a moment, taking in the magnitude of what had just happened. The crew around him was silent, each of them processing the victory in their own way. They had fought against impossible odds, and against all expectations, they had won. Humanity, the underdog, had defeated the might of the Galactic Empire. "Captain," Rachel said, her voice trembling with relief, "we did it. We actually did it." Alex nodded slowly, a faint smile crossing his face. "Yes, we did." The crew erupted into cheers, the tension of the battle lifting from their shoulders. But Alex knew that this victory was more than just a military triumph, it was a symbol. The Empire had learned that no matter how powerful they were, no matter how vast their resources, they could not break the spirit of humanity. The galaxy, once indifferent and even dismissive of Earth, now looked upon the blue planet with a mixture of awe and fear. The Empire, shattered and broken, could no longer maintain its hold on the galaxy. It was a new era, one where the balance of power had shifted dramatically. And Earth, humanity, was at the center of it all. The war was over, but the consequences of that victory were just beginning to unfold. Captain Alex Donovan stood on the observation deck of the Aegis, gazing out at the stars. His eyes traced the familiar constellations of Earth's night sky, now visible from space. For a long time, he had dreamed of this moment, of standing here, knowing that the war was won, that humanity had prevailed. But now, as the reality set in, the victory felt heavier than he had imagined. The galaxy had taken notice. Earth was no longer a fringe planet on the edge of space. They were now a force to be reckoned with. "Captain," Lieutenant Rachel Moore's voice broke the silence, pulling Alex from his thoughts. "The delegation from the Galactic Council is ready to begin peace talks. They're waiting for you." Alex turned to face her, nodding slowly. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Let's go." The peace talks were being held aboard a neutral space station, located in the heart of the galaxy, far from the tensions of the war. Representatives from the surviving galactic powers had gathered to discuss the future of the galaxy. And at the center of the negotiations was Earth. Humanity's shining victory was now the most important topic in the room. As Alex entered the conference room, the chatter among the delegates fell silent. All eyes were on him, the man who had led humanity to victory against the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known. The weight of their gazes was intense, but Alex didn't flinch. He had led his people to this moment, and now he would guide them through the next phase, one of peace, diplomacy, and rebuilding. Captain Donovan, a tall, regal figure from the Andromeda Coalition, greeted him with a slight bow. "Your actions have altered the course of galactic history. We are all here today because of your leadership." Alex nodded in acknowledgement, though inwardly, he couldn't help but feel the sting of the many sacrifices that had brought them to this point. His mind briefly flickered to Bonner, the soldier who had given everything for this victory. He could almost hear his voice, still echoing in his memories, urging him to keep pushing forward. Bonner's death had marked a turning point in the war, and now, Alex had the responsibility of carrying that sacrifice into the future. "Thank you," Alex replied, his voice calm but firm. "But this victory was not just mine. It belongs to every man and woman who fought, every soldier who gave their life, and every citizen who believed we could win." The peace negotiations began in earnest, with Earth demanding a seat at the table. The message was clear: humanity was no longer the underdog. They were not asking for favors or permission, they were asserting their place among the stars. Alex's eyes remained steady as the discussions unfolded. The other delegates, who had once looked down on Earth, now listened intently. The Galactic Council had seen firsthand the strength of humanity, and they understood that Earth could no longer be ignored or dismissed. The Empire's fall was just the beginning. There was now a new power in the galaxy, one that would shape the future of all races. As the hours passed, the representatives from Earth outlined their demands: equal standing among the galactic powers, access to the resources and knowledge that had once been denied to them, and, most importantly, the protection of their people and sovereignty. Alex knew that the negotiations were just the first step. This would not be an easy road. The Empire's defeat had rattled the entire galaxy, and some of the older powers were not thrilled by the idea of Earth rising to prominence. But Alex had a new weapon now: respect. Humanity had earned it, and he would not let anyone take it away. "We will work together, or we will not work at all," Alex stated firmly during one of the sessions, his gaze locked with the representatives across the table. "We will no longer be treated as an afterthought. We will protect our people, and we will protect this galaxy. The future belongs to all of us." His words were met with a mixture of agreement and resistance, but the room had shifted. There was no longer any doubt that humanity would have a seat at the table. The Aegis, the ship that had led them through the war, was now a symbol of Earth's newfound power. Later that evening, in the quiet of the Aegis, Alex stood once again in front of the stars. The ship was docked at the space station, and the peace talks were progressing, slowly but steadily. Earth's representatives were pushing for terms that would ensure humanity's place in the galaxy, but Alex knew the real work was just beginning. There would be no more battles, no more spacefaring conflicts, for now. But the galaxy was a vast, unpredictable place, and humanity had to be prepared for whatever came next. Rachel entered the room, her eyes soft with understanding. She had been by his side through everything: the battles, the victories, the losses. She had seen it all, and she knew that Alex wasn't done yet. "You did it, Captain," she said, her voice quiet. "You led us to victory." Alex shook his head, his expression somber. "We did it, Lieutenant. All of us." There was a long pause before Rachel spoke again. "What happens now?" Alex's gaze drifted to the stars once more. "Now, we rebuild. We take our place among the galactic powers. But we'll never forget the sacrifices that got us here. Not Bonner. Not anyone. The future is ours, but it's a future we have to protect, every day, every step of the way." The next few weeks were filled with the hustle and bustle of diplomacy. Earth's demands were met with resistance from certain quarters, but Alex and the others held firm. The Aegis was a constant reminder of what humanity had achieved, and the crew, despite the weariness that clung to them, continued to work tirelessly. They were no longer just survivors, they were trailblazers. But the emotional toll of the war was still heavy. Late one evening, as Alex walked the halls of the Aegis, he found himself in front of the memorial wall, a place where the names of the fallen were etched into the ship's metal, each one a reminder of the price humanity had paid for its victory. Bonner's name was there, among many others. Alex reached out, his hand resting gently on the engraved letters. "We did it, Bonner," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You're not forgotten." The following day, the peace talks reached a final agreement. Earth would be granted equal standing among the galactic powers. The Empire's hold on the galaxy was shattered, and the galaxy had turned its eyes toward Earth with a new respect. Humanity had shown that they were not just survivors, they were warriors, diplomats, and visionaries. And so, the new dawn began.